Hi, it's Artie from Brown Bear Herbs. I want to talk to you about Angelica. I'm referring specifically to Western Angelica or Angelica archangelica. I'm not referring to the Chinese herb Angelica. So they have related but different uses. So I think of this as an herb primarily for women, but there are lots and lots of uses for it that are gender neutral. But it has a lot of femininity to the medicine, and I want to share that with you as well as these more physical, gender independent of gender medicines that it has to offer. So I I tend to think of this one as good for thin, pale women who have purple in their fingers and or toes, um, indicating low circulation to their peripheries. Um, it can also and also like a time of life right around Saturn return, late 20s. It can help with some of those emotional challenges or struggles. And then it is considered a bear medicine, so it can also be helpful for stockier, thicker people that have indication of blood stagnation, which would be primarily like yellowish or greenish around the veins, or bluish, but it has like a towards the yellow end of the spectrum of blue. And that's the indicator, one indicator of blood stagnation. Also, if you look under the tongue, if the veins are really fat, that is another indication of blood stagnation. So for those two types of people, it's doing different things, and you might find benefit from Angelica without being either of those two types of things, but it definitely relates to, with the thinner person, it's stimulating and helps with the circulation, and it helps with some of the emotional stuff that can be going on. Now, obviously, not everybody who's thin is having emotional issues, but that can be part of the picture with that. With herbs, I'm usually looking for signs that an herb is good for multiple indications, like multiple health problems, like 3 different health problems, or an emotional problem and a health problem and a spiritual issue or desire, looking at the whole picture. So, and sometimes I usually do that by asking a lot of questions. I usually talk to people for about an hour and a half when I do a consultation, first time consultation, not every time. And then I look at their tongue to see what signs are showing up there. And I look at, check their pulse to see what signs are showing up there. So between their tongue, their pulse, and their story, and I like to look at labs too, and other information from other providers, I can usually narrow things down. But sometimes their story doesn't tell me as much as their tongue does, or I see a lot of information. I get a lot of information from their pulse, and it can be just one of those things. So it may be a good, I'm just saying that because it may be a good fit for you, even if you don't feel like you're the typical Angelica person. So in terms of, a lot of times these people who I think of primarily are people with delayed menstruation, or it's very scanty. It can also help with excessive menstruation. So it's can either stimulate to bring it on, and it can also bring on labor, so not for during pregnancy, and use caution if you're nursing. Definitely, I would not use Angelica if you're nursing unless it was indicated for the child. It's very, very stimulating, so you could overstimulate and cause vomiting. If you take too much, it can cause vomiting. So I recommend low doses of the tincture, like 1 to 3 drops. And if you're making a tincture yourself, then it's recommended that you use the dried root. And I think it has less tendency to cause the vomiting. Nobody wants that? And you can get a lot of benefit out of it if you don't have that happen. So it's worth, the herb is worth it. You just want to do it the right way. But I think normally what brings it up in my mind is that a person has delayed menstruation. So like each month it's coming later than they feel like they should be getting it, or absent. It's also really good for addictive tendencies. Like you feel a sense of emptiness within yourself, some depression, dullness, and then you look outside yourself to people or substances like tobacco, alcohol, drugs to try to fill that. And Angelica, I find it gives kind of a sense of like the beauty of that channel within you that is emptiness, but that emptiness is like a conduit for information and for like the beautiful receptivity of femininity. So I feel like it has a very spiritual nourishment quality to it for females. But I've definitely seen men who are benefit a lot from Angelica too. And it's used in sweat lodges, in indigenous sweat lodges here in North America. So that's benefiting men and women too. So it has a very spiritual side of it as well. And this turning that emptiness into like a channel is kind of the general sense I get of it. And it's like a beautiful, loving, kind of exalted feeling that it has. Like this, like it's a honorable feeling. It's not quite getting it, but it's such a beautiful herb. For smoking, you can take it as tincture with the 1 to 3 drops, small doses to start with. You can, if you have like an oral fixation with your tobacco smoking and you want to try something besides smoking, or you've smoked and now you want to like move to the next level of not smoking at all, you could try chewing the seeds of the Western Archangelica, and that is supposed to give you a distaste for tobacco. Okay, so I wanted to also talk about how it's stimulating to the liver and digestive system. It helps with the digestion of fats. It's invigorating, like the bears consume it to help wake up and energize themselves in their slumbers, their long fat-filled slumbers. So it's good for that. And my favorite use for Angelica for that anybody can appreciate and use any age is as a bruise remedy. Angelica does help lowering, moderating blood pressure. I wouldn't choose it unless you're fitting in with some of the other indications for Angelica, because it's a strong remedy, but and it should fit your overall picture. But I have a feeling that kind of like ability to regulate blood pressure is partly what's at play with this bruise help, because if you can get a few drops onto your skin where you have a bruise within like 5 or 10 minutes of the bruise, that's like the bruise is like still forming at that point. So you can actually see the bruise diffuse. It's like watching magic. Is one of the most amazing herb things to see, in my opinion. So I recommend having a little bottle on hand for everyone in every household, because it is good to treat your bruises, especially if you get a joint injury. I find that if you treat, like I often treat joint injury with some True Solomon seal for the ligaments being perturbed by the experience, because True Solomon seal can adjust them if they're like bagged out or they're too tight. And if the joint's out of whack, it just messes with the ligament. So that can bring that into alignment. And then I like rosemary, like a salve on there to like decrease the fluid that's develops, like as you see that swelling. But I don't get the results I want until I treat the bruise. So definitely Angelica for that, and also yarrow, because a lot of times what happens is I feel like there's the bruise initially that the Angelica is so good for, and then if you do end up with some clots, then the yarrow is, even micro clots, the yarrow is so good for getting rid of those. And so a lot of the swelling goes down. First amount of swelling goes down from that rosemary, which helps with the clean up interstitial fluid. And then the second swelling goes down when those bruises are treated. It's amazing. The joints are so happy. So I recommend everybody have Angelica on hand. And a lot of indigenous communities really believe in treating bruises because they can have long-term consequences, even though it's such a minor thing. And also just, you know, I don't have to deal with, because I know this, I don't have to deal with like a sore spot for weeks that you would normally have with a bruise. I find that if you get the Angelica on there within 15 minutes, then you can often see the bruise go away, and then it's usually not painful. And even if you get it on a little bit later, you might still see the bruise, but it will clear up within a few weeks instead of several weeks, something like that. So Angelica, so amazing. Also sometimes used for headaches, which probably has to do somewhat with the blood pressure, I would think. And the digestive stimulation. Like I said, too much of it can cause vomiting, but if you're having trouble digesting fats, then a small amounts of Angelica, kind of like ginger or osha, any of those resinous, like spicy roots can be helpful in that situation. But if you have trouble digesting fats and you're also having delayed menstruation and you're also feeling like this drug and alcohol issues, then Angelica would be wonderful for you. That's Angelica. If you try it, please let me know your experience. The tincture will be up on the site, and I'd love to hear how it goes for you and why you decided to use it and how it helped you. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications.